I unlock these doors every morning. So, all right, we're in Chapter 3, so I'm on about page 57 or so in the book. Now, they put a lot in here. I would say especially the stuff that's in here in pages 58 to 63, this stuff, don't worry about that. Yeah, it'll be on the written test. It will not, this stuff will not be on a hands-on test until Chapter 12. All right? Because that's the focus of Chapters 12 through 16. All right? We will talk about some of this stuff, how to add code to a form. Guess what? That's what you've been doing. So we should be able to go through a lot of this quickly. And some more coding skills. So some of this we've gone over. All right. Again, I'm doing it a little, I think that every time I teach this, I teach it a little bit differently. I would say that probably with any class I've ever had, I've done more advanced stuff with you fast than I have with any other class. Now, you know, if you're like, you're going way too fast, I'm totally lost in here, just send me an email or talk to me before class or talk to me after class. That's fine. But tomorrow, when you go in, you should be able to, you know, if you say, well, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do the Celsius and the other one, then don't do those tomorrow. Just do the pretest, because that'll give you a gauge as to what you're understanding and what you're not understanding. All right? Okay, so this introduction to coding, they talk about object-oriented programming. Everything that you create technically in a program is an object. I don't expect that to make a lot of sense to you. But what I'm saying is, this is an example of a label object. So is this, and this, and this. These are all examples of text box objects. These three are example of button objects. This thing is a form object. All right? And every form object, bless you, every form object is an instance of the form class. Every button object is an instance of the button class. Why does that matter? Because notice that if I click on here, what do I get? All right? I get all the stuff that I can do for this particular text box. Does that make sense? But if I highlight all of them, you probably will notice this does get smaller. This is stuff where I can make changes and all of them will be changed at the same time. What's not in here? How about name? Because they each have their own name. All right? And that's kind of what they're getting into in here. Okay? Now, if you want to go and do something where you really, want to, one of the things I thought of doing for your pretest was having you do this problem that's right here. If there's a problem with that, they give you the code in the book. So it's not like you'd have to do a lot of thought. All right? But it's a pretty decent program. You can probably tell from looking at it. Label, 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 text box, read-only text box, read-only text box, read-only text box, button, button. All right? So you should be able to go through and take a look at that. Okay? So how do you refer to these things? Again, with a period. The name of the class, dot, the name of the member, or the name of the object, dot, the name of the member. Okay? So we've gone in and we have manually changed the text using our properties window. If you put it in like this, you're changing it with code. This code, you're still doing it with code, but rather than you writing the code, it's being written in the background for you. All right? All right. Again, I mentioned before that like many programming languages, and for Maya and for Keegan, it was the same way in JavaScript. This is an event-driven programming language. It's kind of like the program is sitting there. Okay, I'm waiting for an event. Okay, I'm waiting for an event. Okay, I'm waiting for an event. Something like a button click. All right, something like that. And how does it respond to those events? It depends on what code you've written in the event handler. And like I told you, when we've got this, if I run this program, you know now that it works. But if I type in 234, I have to click the calculate button for something to happen. I think you'd all agree with that. If I just don't click anything, it's going to sit here forever. And if I click exit right now, system doesn't care that I put that in there. And if I click clear right now, the system doesn't care I had something in there. All right? And that's pretty much what they're saying in here. Okay? So, how to add code to a form. How to create an event handler for a form. Well, we already talked about that. If I go, let's assume that all I've done is written this, and I don't have any code in yet. You know when you look at this, if I double click, it brings up the event handler for that code. All right? The default event is what? The default event is the click event. Now, please look up on the screen. We've looked at this, but not the way I'm showing it to you. All right? I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go back to there. All right? And I'm going to click on it. It doesn't matter, but I'm clicking on a button. Now, notice when I click this lightning bolt, it says that I have code for the button's click event. Notice, for example, there is no code. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out one of these for the back color changed event. If I wanted to set it up so that if the user could change the back color, something would happen, I would go in there. All right. And if I click that for this button, okay, now notice it now has code in the back color changed also. I don't want that there, so I'm just going to remove it. All right. I already mentioned to you what the load event is. That's if you want to set something up before the program starts to run. I gave you that example of somebody coming in with a message, a hello message or whatever. And it could be just about anything you put in there. All right, you know what IntelliSense is. Am I right in assuming that? Okay. The completion list gets smaller as you start to add your own stuff in here. Okay. Here's the event handlers for that example that they showed. What is it? Wow, here's a surprise. Button, calculate, click. What we will get to eventually is we don't want to put any code in that click event itself. We want that click event to call a routine that's going to do our work. You might say, why don't we just put the code in here? Because remember, we might want to do the same thing whether you click a button or choose a menu option. So I want the code in one place and be able to call it from multiple places. That's what we'll get to fairly soon. Syntax errors are errors in language. I already showed you those. You misspelled something, you forget a semicolon, they're shown in here. The program will not run when you have syntax errors. You'll just get a message you've got errors. How to code with a readable style. Well, it says this is a method that's written in a readable style. Technically, you could write it like this. So this code that's down here is the same as the stuff that's up there. You're all smart people. You can all look at it and see why you'd probably want it in a more readable style. All right. Hopefully you've noticed I haven't used maybe a ton of white space, but I've used some just to break stuff up. All right. Even comments can be good for that. They break stuff up. All right. And in fact, I didn't show you this, and this was one of the things I meant to show you. It's not a big thing. But I'm going to go back to here, and let's grab, which is the one we just did, our making change thing. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go back to our code. All right. I'm going to go to the code itself. I'm going to jump way up to the top of the program, right under my using statement. And I'm going to put in here what some books will call, for lack of better words, kind of like a prologue. All right. In other words, let me put this dash here, via tab. Okay. Now it looks ugly right now because there's no formatting built into it. But I can say, for example, here, write, compile, etc. Notice how it's putting in the little asterisks for me. This is a program prologue. So someone can look at this and know what the program is going to do. It even has an example of what you should get for output. It doesn't make the program run any better. Technically, it slows the program down. Although, according to what they say in this chapter, it doesn't slow the program down. But again, as I told you, that when the computer starts to run your program, it's got to go through and throw out any comments. It throws out all white space that's in the program because it doesn't understand that stuff. It has no use for it. All right. We've looked at comments, so you know this is a multi-line comment. Starts with a slash star, ends with a star slash. I mentioned single line comments are like these. And I even mentioned that there's another type of comment that starts with 3 slashes. That's an XML comment. I don't even know if they talk about that in this book. All right. How to work with a text editor toolbar. Well, that's the stuff that's up here. Just to show you an example of this. Let's assume that I'm writing this program like this, okay? And I've got some code in here. For some reason, my program appears to be working, but every line that's in here is not working. Are you with me? That's not working. I can go back and I can manually come in here and do a slash star and a star slash, or I can do dash, 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 etc. Or I can highlight all of it, come over to here, and almost right under help, it says comment out the entire section. See what it does? And the one next to it, uncomments. Sometimes when you're testing, that's a very, it almost all works. You comment out what doesn't work. All right. There's a few other things that you can do with that in there too. All right. Zoom in and zoom out. There are ways of zooming in. You can reset this. I don't play with that stuff, but you can do it if you want to. All right. And they show you that in there. I don't think there's anything on a test or whatever about that. These code snippets, I'm going to show you an example of a code snippet. All right. When we get to chapter 12, when we get there, all right, we're going to be using a lot of these properties types of things that we talked about. Now, let's assume I wanted to use one now. I'm going to put something up here. I'm going to immediately remove it. But I'm just going to type in here private void test. Okay? And this is literally just a test. There's no errors there. But what I want to type in here is I want to create what's called a property. Okay? What the heck is a property? That's in chapter 12 through 16. But there is a shortcut. I can type in prop and hit tab, tab. You see how it starts to fill it out for me? That's a code snippet that it put in. So when they talk about code snippets, typically what you have with a code snippet is you have, it's just basically, it's a way that the system will put in some code for you. That's all it is. And if you say, well, why aren't you telling us more about it? I never use them. But they're there if you want to use them. All right. Again, as I showed you before, if you did go out to msdn.microsoft.com and typed into the search box there, code snippet, it would show you everything you want to know about code snippets. And a bunch of stuff you don't even want to know. All right. All right. Again, refactoring code is doing a lot of renaming and stuff. I already mentioned that to you. See, so sometimes they'll come in there and they'll say, hey, you want to rename that? Do you want to rename all this? Typically, you'll check everything. All right, because I want to rename it all. Annotations, showing you a little of this. All right. If you don't know this, All right, there are a few, again, this is an editor too. So let's say that all over the place, I've got num quarters, and I spelled it wrong all over the place. All right, I forgot the E for in quarters. I could go in here, do a Control H, just like you do with a lot of like Word and stuff like that, and I could change them all. So I could change that to hello, for example, and it would change all of them. All right. How to get information, we already talked about hitting the F1 key. There's nothing new there. How to run, test, and debug, you know more about this than most people do because you've already compiled, tested, and run your programs. All right. Just so you're aware of it, if you look up on the screen here, I am right now in what's called design mode. When I go and run my program, I am now in run mode, sometimes called execution mode. All right. What we'll get to in another chapter is I can come in here and I can see this area that's gray over here. It's called the gutter area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click in one of the lines that has code in it, and that puts in what's called a breakpoint, which means I want the system to break right there. I want it to stop. Not break like it's broken. I want it to break, meaning that it stops, like you hit your brake on your car. So when I run this now, it's going through everything, but I'm going to put in here 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to click calculate. Notice it turns yellow. It's showing me that's the line that's executing right now. And I can take my mouse, say, okay, there's the value, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's the value of min change, 1. There's that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. And there's the value 999. If I wanted to continue on, now this button that usually says start, it says continue. And I can click that. I'm going to get my error, remember, because it's out of range what I put in, but it'll still run. Setting breakpoints can be a really nice way of you can step through your program and see it's almost working, but something's screwed up and I don't for the life of me know what it is. All right. When you run your program, you're testing it. Here is an example. I don't know what they did here. They formatted something wrong. All right. The subtotal was formatted to convert dot to decimal, but maybe they put hello in there. So it's trying to take hello and convert it into a number, and it can't. So you get an error. This is called the exception assistant. This thing, there's the error. And you can click on the different possibilities to show you information about the error and the like. All right. How do you debug a runtime error? Well, the program is running and there is an error. Typically when that happens, just so you know, because this is not a mistake, but it's something almost everybody does. So you run your program. And this is a real crummy example of what I'm showing you here. You see that. Sometimes what you can do is you can click in here and I want to start typing. Sometimes the system will let you do that. Sometimes it'll say the program's still running. So when you click the red square or maroon square, it stops the run. Okay. And that's it. So please take the rest of the period. You've got now an hour and about 15 minutes. So please, if you have time, try to do 3 things. What 3 things? First, go back. We've already written the make change GUI. Go back and see yourself using your own intellect and the copy I gave you. See if you can write make change console. If you get all that done and there's still some time left, start on the Fahrenheit to Celsius, either the console or the GUI. All right? And then again, when you get into your tomorrow, as I mentioned, first thing we're going to do, go back and re-look over the Chapter 1 stuff. And then after we do that, we're going to go in and we're going to take the written test. After that, I'm going to give you a pretest. All right? Better to be super prepared than unprepared for your first test next week. Okay? Luke our tutor may be coming tomorrow. I don't know if he is or not. I'll ask him this afternoon when I see him. All right. I'm going to walk downstairs because that's the only other place I was today. See if there's any keys laying on the table. Okay. But I did go in the office and they weren't in there. So I literally took the program that we had, the make change GUI, and I was just screwing around. I bet you in 5 minutes I made it into a console program. I am taping. I didn't say anything. I just didn't realize I had the tape player on. And I put it into an infinite loop on purpose. Told you to enter the change. Instead of an if, I made that a while. These are the exact same calculations. Nothing changed. And instead of putting them in the text boxes, I just used right lines. So you'll notice that if I run this, just like we did before, 999, there it is. I put a couple blank lines in there. If I put in something that's out of range, it just asks you to do it again. Okay? So like I said, you should be able to do that very quickly.